Hi, Marsha. I'm Anuj Jain, and I'm based in Singapore. At this moment, originally I'm from India, but I'm in Singapore since 2002. Uh, Currently, I'm writing a newsletter, I think, through which we got connected. It's called Salt.io, and Salt is with double T. This is to help mid-career transitioners or navigating transitions and helping personal transformation for a lot of corporate warriors and entrepreneurs. And this is based on my own journey as a corporate honcho at one point of time, and then transitioning to become an entrepreneur. And within that innings, I've become a venture capitalist as well as a venture builder for a lot of tech startups. So the company that I founded was called Startup O, which was a global platform for discovering deserving founders through a cooperative-like structure of assessments online and then converting into data science to see who are the most top quartile sort of founders from across the world. And then we had a venture fund which we used to take an interest and invest into the companies, and many other family offices used to come behind to invest in those companies. The third thing that we were doing on the platform was to grow companies' revenue, particularly in Asia, which is a very tricky territory because there are 13 different countries, cultures, and so on and so forth. So, helping companies grow in Asia was the third thing, apart from assessments, investments, and scaling, is what Startup O used to do, which I co founded. Now, after deploying the fund, I'm still in the same space, but helping later stage companies which have raised 10 to $20 million or more, and they want to land in Singapore and expand in Asia. So I'm leveraging the know-how and the network for not only funding, but go-to-market and revenue scaling for companies. So involved with some fantastic companies which are really moving pretty fast. And this is for the companies. So a lot of Western Hemisphere companies can actually they falter when they come to Asia.
No
So that's
kidding.
where I
Yeah.
think they can find a established network and of relationships of CXO level decision makers through this company, which is called the Ants Commune, which is the new company for these consulting services. And on the personal, this is for the companies, and on personal basis, the Salt is something which is very close to my heart because the basic belief that education system and the corporate world has not trained us or helped us develop any muscles to land softly when the transitions are either thrust upon us or we make a choice to transition into a new role, new life, new phase. And that's where I think I see a lot of successful people falter. And
Yes, I've
especially,
seen that. I've seen that also in my own career, and I love what you're doing in your newsletter to help people in that way, and also in your consulting. Because if you're bringing people over as an add-on value into Singapore, all of those skills come to bear. And how are you finding they adjust to operating in Singapore when they come from another country?
Singapore is one of the best countries to land, so as to say, because it's very efficient. Not only in terms of setting up businesses, but in terms of access to talent, access to very friendly government policies, an ecosystem which is easy to access and open. So,
Yeah.
so I
So they
think
do well.
they do very well. But Singapore is not Asia, so I think they also get caught up in this whole. It's a surreal place. It's a very let's say, controlled environment to some extent, which is intentional and deliberate. However, all the countries around it, which is billions of people, is quite chaotic and
Yes. Yes.
have very very different political, economic, technology, and social parameters. So I think that's why land in Singapore and expand in Asia is a great strategy, and we have done work with many of the companies successfully. So yeah, I mean, frankly, 90% of the companies struggle in Asia. I've also
Yes.
worked
No
with
kidding.
large MNCs who were very successful in Europe, US, and it took them years to unlearn and relearn the localization rules, and still it's going on. It's a lifetime you need to learn Asia from
It is
Japan to
you're
Jakarta.
you're really well placed in that area. And along the way, of course, you've learned a lot of ways to expand into Asia yourself successfully, plus your own experience in India. Do you have, you're well placed, I think, for this next generation for people that are wanting to expand out of the US, for example, and land successfully in Asia. And you would recommend that their stop off would be with you because then you would lay out the map. And when you're looking over the Asian map, do you make recommendations on countries that they should explore based on the product they're trying to bring? And you understand the ecosystems that they want to go into? Where are you seeing the most powerful ecosystems across the Asian landscape that work well for your clients? Or maybe give me a couple of examples that
Yeah,
have landed well.
Yes, sorry, but it totally depends on the stage of the company and what their products are, of course, right? So if you have to talk about mostly B2B technology companies, I think markets like Singapore and up north in Hong Kong, they mirror each other quite a bit onto because of regional headquarters and hubs out there. But then you typically have a Singapore plus one strategy where you also tap, ASEAN market like it could be Philippines, it could be Indonesia. Again, totally depends on the nature of the product and the product market fit and the competitive index in these countries. Now, from Singapore, a lot of times we see even Australia and New Zealand is covered, which mirrors US kind of behavior in terms of purchasing decisions and structure of the market. So there's a high dollar consumption market, but very different nature than ASEAN. But also, I think Singapore provides a great sort of linkages in certain industries like F&B, SaaS, for example. I've seen some successful examples there.
They're very
And then
open to business with Singapore. I mean, Australia is very open to you guys.
the beauty of Singapore is the brand Singapore.
It's true. It
If
is true.
you're seen here, you get access to talent, which is also an interesting thing. You get a lot of experienced people to be in your team, or even if you have very lean team, you can rely on a lot of fractional leaderships, ecosystem support, and travel is another thing because to cover these markets is not easy. From if you're in one off location in Asia and then you're traveling 12 hours everywhere. So Singapore that way is very strategically located. And
Yeah.
as I said, and then up north in Japan, so we have some very good examples of some U.S. companies which were doing pretty well in the local markets there, had successful foray into a Japanese market, which is very opaque. But because of the relationships and the network, we built ASEAN Japan corridor, and that happens only after you invest years in people, in markets, to develop that trust, which what we call in Asia is called Guangxi,
Guanxi.
Guan.
What
Guangxi
is it called?
is Guangxi, so
Oh,
it's
Guanxi. Oh, yeah. What does it mean?
it's relationships, ultimately the trust in relationships.
Mm.
And although so it's a pretty interesting geography where not only there's cutting edge technology that comes in some cases faster than many other emerging markets in the world, but at the same time it behaves in a very traditional way where the face still is very important, where relationships still rule the roost, where there are various factions and clubs which you need to maneuver to be able to actually seem to get in, right? So it's an
Absolutely.
interesting mix. It's a great
It's
cocktail.
it's taken your lifetime to really generate that in the markets that you're working in. I just think it's an extraordinary success that you've achieved in that area alone that enables you to go into these various markets across several countries and really help companies coming in. Early in my career, I was with a consulting firm that was attached to CSE Index, and they went into the Japanese market, and within 2 years, the whole place was shut down because they had no idea what they were doing. They were overpricing. They were doing whatever it was. They just failed when they expanded into Japan, and so they needed your expertise then. And I think this is probably true of a lot of places. Now, let me ask you in terms of your own personal journey and what you're doing now with mid-level entrepreneurs or, mid-level corporate people, having born out of your own experience, what were some of the things that motivated you to support them? And what are the learnings that you had in your own career that were really tough and that you needed to learn in order to be the success that you are today?
Well, so as I mentioned to you in an offline chat as well, that first 15, 17 years of my career was in large FMCG MNC companies, and like any other corporate career, you get very used to the system, the support, the brands that you are playing with, and somewhere I guess you become an expert in a way of supply chain, for example, or of brand or marketing. However, you start taking for granted the muscles that are needed to start from scratch, for example, right? So there's a lot of unlearning needs to be done if you need to transition from something that you are an expert in for a long period of time.
That's
And
a
that was
good
a
point. But what are some of the unlearnings? Like when I made the change, I realized very quickly I had to be buying my own paper clips and I need to buy my own pencils. And so if you're not really careful, you can, out expense yourself before the revenue starts flowing in. But what were some of your learnings when you say that they had to really change because they don't have this huge brand behind them or corporation? It's not just walking in and saying, I'm from XYZ, we've got the best product and we've had it for 20 years.
So I think the first thing that goes is access, which we take for granted when we are in a particular corporate, right? So people get confused with the designations that they carry and who they are, individually. So I think entrepreneurship especially provides you an amazing nakedness and non-camouflage life, which is then who you are, and on your, pure quality of your thought, of your vision, of your execution, you get to open doors there without your card. But when you are a corporate honcho, a lot of people have this chip on the shoulder, which I see sometimes, and smirk because I've been in those shoes, and I said there is so
Absolutely.
much of identification with the title that
Absolutely.
it land pretty hard on that front. The access was one. Second, I think, particularly in the space that I'm operating in the technology startup investment space, one of the after my first startup failed, when I became a corporate dropout, then I had a startup, didn't work out, learned a lot at a costly expense. And the main learning was that who you know is more important than what you're building at times, most of the times. And this is a very opaque industry. And particularly when you're in large MNC companies, the transparency, teamwork, collaboration, all these things were obviously the top of the mind, sort of, typical corporate values and all. When you become, so that was like a, structured zoo, so as to say. But when you come to the wild, it's a very different rules of engagement, right?
Oh,
So
tell
I
me the
think
difference. What are some of the differences that you saw?
so, that's what I'm saying. One of the things that why I created Startup O platform also was with learnings of my own journey, where I realized that who you know is more important than what you're building, because it's such a subjective and a biased environment of assessing companies and understanding what entrepreneurs can build in forward-looking sort of nature, that it becomes a game of warm introductions to venture capitalists or to investors, and for the critical oxygen that you need.
Right.
So that was that is something that one needs to know how to own one's narrative, how to open doors where there were none, or you have to take a chisel and just break the wall and make a door if need be.
Keep
But
knocking.
the whole idea is to be able to be in those groups which
Right,
influence
right.
capital, which influence network, which is essential for your survival. And these are the
Yes.
things that you take it for granted with your monthly salary and a lot of brand support and other aspects in the corporate world, right? And the
Yeah.
third thing is
Oh, go ahead.
the third thing, obviously, so access, and then your ability to maneuver, influence, network. Or I actually learned this pretty interesting thing somewhere. It says influencing without positional power. It's a very powerful thing.
Yes,
Anybody can
yes,
influence when
yes.
you have the power, but can you influence without positional power?
Before
And
you go
that
on to number three, though, tell me a little bit about how you were able to achieve that. Because when you're also operating in a new market, you have to even learn in the society who are the players. You don't even know when you, and often they're underneath the, visual. And you really have to search out what are the clubs, where are people going, what are the high society people that have the money that you're looking for, where are they playing? How did you get a strategy for doing that, or how did you end up? How did you personally end up opening doors? How did you figure that one out?
Frankly speaking, there was no strategy, and I didn't even know. So I really learned from the first principles in the trenches, hard way, and that's what my whole endeavor is, to help people understand that there could be a strategy. There is a methodical way. There is a
Hmm.
process. It's an art and
Hmm.
science, but there is a science also. It's
Well
not
said. Well
completely
said.
based on my experience of, like, you just have to get up every morning and then figure it out, and then keep going
Right.
every day.
But this is your tremendous added value because you've been there, done that, and know this, and you can really guide others to learn this as well. And even knowing that, it still takes time to figure out who are the clubs, who are the
Yeah.
people, and where are they operating, what are they doing, and how can you, participate in those yourselves to get that warm entry, really.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny that you said that, because I realized that when you transition from a corporate job to start something of your own, um, people do not consider time as a commodity which is most precious. Perhaps because we are used to the monthly checks, so time, it's anyway fixed. So sometimes I think we don't value time the way we should when you're on your own, because and I tell people that if you can save a year or two learning this process, which can expedite what you would have done in 2 years time, in 6 months for example, you save $250,000
No
literally of
kidding.
your
Yeah. Well
right.
said. Very well said. And a great point, too.
And most of the times when you're excited with the new thing and you have some money saved from your corporate things, you don't calculate all this stuff. So
No,
currently,
no.
it's funny that you told me, because of the Salt newsletter, I got some inbound this thing from, obviously, from people who know me or know somebody who know me, and they approach, and it's totally inbound, and it's interesting. They're very senior people. So I'm working by invite only, like inbound sort of stuff, with two of them now. They are CXOs with 25, 30 years of experience in very large companies, and they are looking for their next phase. And I have structured a program, so that's very interesting. I'm really enjoying that. A weekly sort of sessions, which are almost handheld. Uh, I How would I have done in a methodical manner, from ideation to validation to creating their MVPs to galvanizing in the first networks of sort of supporters to understand, and getting this whole curated set of resources that I have obviously built over a period of time based on my own mistakes and experiments.
Yeah.
And they're really enjoying. It's almost like I wish and pray that everybody should experience it,
Right.
but it's
Right.
not for the weak-hearted also. So if you can do it in a methodical way, where there is, even if you have a job, do it on the side to learn. This is almost like a life skill for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel very strongly about, for young ones as well as for the mid-age, especially. I guess it's a life skill, because our longevity is kicking in. We're going to live till 85, 90 or more,
Right. Right.
and the structures of corporate world are, not only are rooted in the industrial relations led HR practices even today, where there is certain, oh, you retire or this,
Yeah.
or and
Good.
now ageism on top of
Mhm.
it.
Oh, yeah.
40,
Serious ageism. Right.
you're almost dead after 40. So so people have to train themselves, but there is nothing. People just grapple, they camouflage. There is a lot of self-esteem issues in many senior people that I meet, And that's where I think there's something out there, but I'm just tinkering
Yeah.
one by one day at a time, one person, one success at a time.
That's where I can see some opportunities maybe in the future between us, because that's a group that I pay attention to. And I find that, first of all, just getting off the daily treadmill and even learning to decide again their own identity is challenging, because in some ways you've identified so much with the brand and the work and the title that you're not even aware really of what you truly love anymore. Maybe you still like fly fishing, but maybe you wanted to paint when you were a kid, whatever. I think we lose track of what our true love is. And also, making that transfer of talent that you had when it was so much positional power into just being, yourself and showing up, is really, really a great gift that you're working with people. And I find it also. So I think that where you're going with that is really, really powerful. Now, before we talked in this area more deeply, though, you were talking about the third thing that you really found. You said that it was access, it was brand and time, and then you had another thing that you were talking about. I should have captured it before we moved on. That
The
has been your own learning,
the
and
third
maybe you've already touched on it.
The third, I think, is the resource optimization, I guess, right? So it's a most important thing when you're on your own, whether it's your personal
Oh,
finance, whether it is your, you become a founder, that's very sexy, but you have to feed so many tummies and families and so on and so forth. So it's a hugely responsible thing. And most of the startups, so I think I read some data which says that 42 or even more, I forgot the numbers, but a very large number of startups, one of the reasons that they fail is they are producing things which people don't need. So
yes,
just
yes,
because
yes.
it can be built, because building something is very cheap and becoming cheaper by the day. So just it can be built does not mean that it should be built. There has to be a commercial hat on and to see the feasibility of this all. And this whole journey is a long journey which can have multiple. So one thing is this parameter. The second biggest reason is that you run out of cash.
Run out
So
of cash way early, way
way
early.
earlier than what you expect, right? So I think
Mhm.
resource optimization is something that even I had faltered on, which is very important for people to do. And
Mhm.
that's where all of the related aspects of the right team, the right partners, so everywhere I really feel these are life skills. It's you don't need to go to any retreat for a spiritual awakening. You don't need to do anything else to learn to do Coursera, MIT courses, and all this stuff. You just start something to solve a world problem, and everything that happens around it is the best form of learning in
It's
life.
really true. It is really true. I've worked with people on major layoff projects when the companies are going into, change. And I've worked with high level people. And one of the things I was saying to them in terms of the resource utilization is cut everything, every subscription you can, whatever you can to buy yourself time. Lower your costs going out so that you can have as maximum time possible to do this exploration, to look at the markets, to research the need, and to figure out what your next piece is. And to your other point, in terms of starting with people on, let's say, if you had access to people that were already in the corporate arena, which you do, then I would start talking with people also about, I looked at it as kind of an inverse, side on side, triangles. One is kind of going down and one is going out, so that when you're on the job, you are starting that research and you're starting to learn those life skills. And then by the time you're actually ready to make the transition, you can't wait to do it. And you're all ready to do it because you've already spent 5 years prepping for it while you got that monthly check coming in as your new hobby. It's not like it's taken away from your corporate time or
Exactly.
your job or whatever. It's enriching your corporate job, but you're also preparing for the next phase.
So that's very interesting that you said that. So you don't need 5 years, number one. I think even a sincere effort of 6 months to a year can get you a lot of insights and a lot of validation. That's one. Second, it's very interesting when a lot of people, when I meet over beers or some game, they always say, yeah, I'm just doing a job, and always want to do something. So I said, they moan basically that I want to become an entrepreneur, but yeah, I have to do the job kind of stuff.
Dream, yeah.
So I just asked them that, what have you done about it over the weekends? I think the first litmus test is, have you given up your golf over the weekend if you really have that fire in the belly to try something else? So people will not change anything in terms of their indulgences and the way they spend their time, but they will still harbor this dream of one day I will be independent and have impact in the world, or I'll start something of my own. The first thing is one small step. Every weekend, you devote your time to learn and meet people outside your comfort zone. Meet people in the startup ecosystem or SME if you want to start a wine shop or whatever it may be, right? So you need to invest time apart from what you're investing when you have a very comfortable, cushy life. And I used to play like golf completely on every weekend it went off completely when I transitioned. I'm not saying that you should not play or balance life, but
Right.
you something got to go, something got to
Yeah.
give, right? So what
Right.
is
Right.
that? This it could be something else, but that's a litmus test. You can't keep talking and saying I wish. You
Mhm.
need to prove that I'm investing in actually hustling through on the side to figure out to minimize the risk. That's definitely
That's what
one
you're
thing.
doing. You're minimizing the risk, which is and maximizing your potential benefit because you've bought yourself time. This idea of working with CXOs, I mean, there's been research that says that the most highly successful startups have happened mid-career. So they talk about the ecosystems where you have a lot of young startups and a lot of energy, and they talk about them failing 3 times. And if they have that kind of determination, then they're worthy investments. But I think that one of the things I noted that you also had started some training courses, some university training courses, and that they don't teach this really typically in management courses. Yet, the old model that you're joining a corporate or you're studying something and you're going to be in something for the rest of your life is so archaic. It's really doing a disservice to people that need to be capable of landing on their feet, adapting, learning. And I think you said to me also yesterday, relearning and keeping going. What have you found in your own career that's really kept you motivated and going and turning and changing and learning? There's a lot of tremendous learning that goes on.
I don't know. In my career per se, I'm very excited. I'm very curious. I think being curious is pretty cool.
Curious. Mhm.
If you're not curious, I think it's quite. I mean, first of all, I would like to say that I do not say that don't do a corporate job or just everybody should do a startup. I think you should think like an entrepreneur, even within a corporate job.
I think
So
that's
the
the
life
key right there.
Yeah,
Go
so you
ahead.
choose what you need to do for your family, for yourself, career, and many friends of mine who are doing extremely well in the corporate and happy or not. But whichever way, but that's not a judgment. The point is that are you approaching life with a certain outlook, which I think is beautiful when you are an entrepreneur, because you're looking at life with a certain philosophy, with certain outlook, certain approach, a philosophy of solving a problem, being passionate about it, working with various, knowing that you are not enough, but you are the core, and you have to bring people better than yourselves come together. So many things, and dealing with uncertainty and still living a balanced life. All these things are so beautiful human traits that you can develop, and dealing with your dark nights and being lonely, and it takes you inwards. Many people become bitter and burnt out also, but that's a learning or opportunity to learn that it is a self-learning journey as well. So I feel that even if you choose to do a job, you'll do much better if you imbibe these principles, this approach. And I did, for example, I designed a program for a large telecom company here where we got their top executives on the same side of the table as some of the founders that we selected who could solve the problem of the telco with their software solution. Now, the design had this inspiration from the process of osmosis, where the particles actually flow both ways. Now, most of the times when you're sitting on the one side of the table and treating the other side of the table, which is the startup or technology vendor, as a vendor, you are donning that hat of I am a decision maker within my corporate. But once you come on the other side of the table and join hands and start solving the problem of your company, it is beautiful the way it unlocked their thinking that, oh, now I have only this much resources and I have to solve this problem. And they were inspired by how these founders from various countries were thinking, which they were not.
Right, right,
So
right.
I and then founders
What a
also learned about.
brilliant, what a brilliant workshop design. That's brilliant because then they could see exactly what they were missing and how do they need to go about things. That's awesome. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, no, I think so. This all lot to do. So I'm very passionate about that. I think there's because I have traveled both paths significantly. One corporate MNCs for 15 plus years, then 10 years in entrepreneurial wildlife, and I see the beauty of both. And I think the new mission is to obviously bring these things together in some way. Both have strengths, and how we can have people take onus and be responsible for their own retraining, if I may say, and learn the principles of this new world, and then either contribute back to their companies, or they become, I would say, lifelong learners and entrepreneurs, because you're going to live long and you need this not today, tomorrow, decade later, you will need this. You won't be able to sit the way the retirement was considered in old days. Yeah.
I think this is a real cutting edge, what you're talking about here. And what I would also encourage you to consider is bringing these companies together. A long time ago, I had looked at an HR model where you would bring in talent, the talent would have whatever they were giving to the organization, and then they would roll back out either to another corporation. That becomes very much a problem with non-compete things. And so I think it kind of falls down in that way. But the idea was that there would be some kind of centralized area where I could roll off the corporate job. I would be like through a layoff when the corporate's doing a redesign or whatever, and I would retrain myself. I could either go back to that group or I could be contracted out to work at another place. And I think that some major corporations picked this up when they generated a kind of a centralized transcontinental HR thing where my health insurance went from here to there. They kept it kind of in that arena, and maybe they did the retraining. But I do feel that what you're doing in this model really is very necessary, and it would really lower the cost. I think sometimes people underestimate the cost in their families and also their communities when these major shifts are happening. And a little area where we could just say, oh, I'm going to go here now, I'm going to generate maybe less income, but I'm going to have some continuous income coming in. Because when they make these big shifts, I think Motorola way back laid off 50,000 people globally. And I was in the Chicago area supporting that project. And, there were so many people in Chicago with the same skills trying to get the job. It was impossible. And it was decimating to the community, to their families, to really everybody involved. And it's not necessary anymore. If we just did this a little more creatively, we could support. And it was the best talent. You know what I mean? There were people that had like patents and stuff. My heart went out to them. And families in university, just bought houses, had mortgages and college fees to pay. I mean, it
Uh,
was tragic.
it's terrible. And I think earlier they used to be one-off cases, but now it's even more rampant after, especially I feel when the Google layoffs happened and the way they happened. That looking back, somebody would definitely write in history that that was a moment when everything shifted, because at least Google was an utopian workplace. Even if I'm in some fuddy-duddy company, not happy with the culture and all this stuff, I had something to hang my hat on and look forward to, saying there is a corporate, which is an ideal workplace, and so on and so forth. And after those things happen unceremoniously, I think there is a moment where, in general, across the world, across corporates, there is a sense of transactional relationship has set in, where there is like no more faith. Yes, anything can happen anytime, sort of a thing. So things are shifting. Remote work, the future of work is upon us in multiple ways, and this is what we are discussing today is very significant part of that future of work jigsaw puzzle for sure.
Yes, 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 I do believe so. And the kind of offerings that you are creating now, I think will have greater and greater impact because you're right on that cutting edge. So anyway, I'm quite passionate about supporting people because I've seen the cost in their
Yeah,
families
yeah.
and in the communities and and also just the terrible waste of talent, where talent became like a capital asset, treated talent like a capital asset. And
Mm.
there's children and babies and mothers and fathers and everybody else involved. But
Yeah,
anyway,
very
you
close.
are the source of the correction. So I appreciate I
Try
appreciate
to
what
be
you're
part of the
doing.
solution. Yeah,
Yeah,
trying to.
you are, and I applaud you and celebrate the progress that you've made, and also the understanding, the depth of understanding that it's taken a whole lifetime, but you're making that shorter for anybody else that's coming in a systematic and understandable way that anybody can grasp. So, what are your next? Like we're early in 2025, and where you and just by concluding our conversation, and anything else you'd like to say, where you see yourself going here in the near future? What are some of your own personal and professional goals that you'd like to achieve for yourself? Don't you love these questions?
I know what is life without goals, but
Yeah, well, that's it. That's right.
so in fact, I would
That's a
encourage you.
very funny question, actually. Do you abide by them? It's like getting a New Year's resolution. There it is. It's there. It is gone.
No, no, I wrote about this also in my newsletter in the last two editions about how do you, let go of certain aspects and then how do you recast the whole thing. Well, for me, I think, there are a few things which stand out. So I definitely would like to double down on things that I feel from within, from after much reflection and meeting so many people and seeing there is a significant problem and would like to be part of the solution by building not only the subscription base for Salt readership, but the thinking there is to build products behind it, right? So for the mid career, so like I said, very boutique, bespoke, one-on-one consulting, but that's I'm just doing because it was inbound. Maybe I'll think more about it. How can it impact 50,000 people who are getting laid off, like Motorola example? Is there something that we can do about it? So I have few ideas on that. I had developed programs earlier, so there's a lot of body of knowledge already there. That's one area. The second area is to develop sort of software-led products for the same community. For example, there's one idea which I can't share too much at this juncture, but for
I was
example, there's
just
a
thinking this is going public, so we don't want to give away all your best problem
I can, but
solvings.
I can be a bit cryptic, but I'm very, very, I've just started designing it recently. So there is a sense of for mid-career transitions and personal transformations, there is a whole body of knowledge of conventional wisdom, right? What you should
Yes,
be doing
yes.
and so forth. Now, I've also seen there's sometimes there are people who are really trying their hard, they're trying their best, and doing everything right and things are not falling in place. And that's where I personally, on my spiritual side of things in journey, there is certain things called beyond conventional when you have to enter the realm of mystic. So I'm also in some weird way trying to bring these together and to help people succeed basically and transform. So I'm
I
trying
think
to design a product.
that's really another cutting edge. I've been connecting with people like yourself and also others, my own spiritual journey, but also there's a couple of other people on LinkedIn that are making this same kind of proposition. I will give you some names of people that I've noted.
I think
Uh,
this is going to be interesting because everything then, earlier it was very watertight, your work and your, personal life and all. Now I think, it's more hyphenate sort of a thing. People are indulging into multiple experiences, interests, work, family life, personal, entrepreneurial. So if everything is dovetailing into each other, then you need to go beyond just, hey, how do you negotiate better or how do you communicate better is no more sufficient. It needs to be conventional and then beyond conventional.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
beyond conventional, there are many esoteric sciences or modalities. Can we bring this together? And at the cusp is some sort of spiritual coaching, but not like one on one perhaps, but with the productization of sorts. So there is
Mhm.
this design that I have, and we started with a few people just now. Hopefully, this is the goal, number one. If that works out, it could be interesting for people to benefit through my
Yeah.
writings and
I think also where I look at the landscape as well is that people are more open to what you just said. Whereas early in my career, if you ever tried to broach any kind of spiritual content or said anything about it, like it was even relevant to you, then it was like, oh, we want nothing to do with this. But I think that's really changed. And that's maybe changed over a 20, 30-year period where people now really realize some of their greatest achievements and their best well-being has come out of that integration. So
and
very
the
well,
and the
very well.
And the last but not the least, I think, since I've been so involved with the technology world, I also see that there is a resurgence of, at least in Asia, is coming up on, it's not just tech for, ordering your cab or pizzas and all this stuff, but the real world problems are being solved in the labs of multiple academic institutions, what we call deep tech. And I've been involved with few companies in the deep tech space, and I see the kind of long-term impact these companies can make in the world. So all the know-how, which is the conventional know-how of building a company, scaling a company, growing it, also bringing it in the domain of deep tech. And I see there are amazing scientists who are working on great problems, but they don't know the commercial side of things
Oh,
that
very
well.
good point. Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
Involved with the university, with in teaching, but also in past experience with some of the R&D bodies. And I see there is an opportunity to bring the similar set of knowledge to this set of people whose inventions and all can really make humankind thrive.
That is very, very exciting. And it gives me a lot of hope in the world. And I see it. I don't know where you're talking and some of the things you're looking at, but I see it really seriously in biotech, where, what kind of disease are we going to have when we get all this stuff worked out? It's just amazing what we're going to be seeing here in the next 20 years. So we're going to need all those changes. You and I, we're going to have to be giving up whatever we've learned and learn it all over again, right? Because it's going to be a brave new world, really, in many ways.
Yeah. So you see the spectrum of ancient wisdom and sciences, which are in the realm of mystic, to the forward-looking deep tech, and that I think somewhere I feel it's a circular model. They'll meet in some funny way. So let's see.
What a beautiful way to leave our conversation. I just love the imagery of that. And I'm going to hold the picture for that as just a magnet to, manifest it. I love
Oh,
having met you. I know I see you all the time and read your materials, and I feel so happy that we've had this opportunity to connect. I think this is one of the great joys of the world that we are in, that we can talk with people across the world and be heart to heart really in many ways and grow over time as well. So thank you for meeting with me this morning. The
I,
take.
w- I want to thank you for approaching and sort of taking the initiative. And as I was telling you, I think the way you conduct and the way you're passionate and reinventing yourself, you should definitely start a podcast properly.
Well, I love the idea because I keep getting to talk with all this talent like you, and it makes me so happy. It makes me feel like everything is well in the world, and whatever the changes are, the people like yourself and others that you're gathering around you, and all the magnificent talent that's out there, we're going to be okay. That's how I come out feeling. So it gives me a great feeling. So thank you so much. And I look forward to watching you and doing things with you and meeting you more in the future. And
No, no,
best
absolutely.
of luck to you and your family over 2025.
Same to you and to your family, and we shall definitely keep in touch more often. Yeah.
We definitely shall. Take
Bye.
care.